Hello, everyone. How are you doing? I was just trying to catch up on all the comments that we already have. So welcome to our first Pitch Wars mentor video chat. I'm Sarah Nicolas. I'm on the board for Pitch Wars, and I am the agent liaison this year. And I've been a mentor since 2012, since the very beginning. So I'm just going to be your moderator today, and I just have a couple announcements before we get started. I keep checking my notes. If you don't know what Pitch Wars is, if you just kind of like stumbled across this video, you can go to pitchwars.org to find out more information. But basically, it's an annual mentoring event where established writers and industry professionals choose one person to mentor, and then it concludes in an agent showcase. And the submission process is competitive. And it mirrors the querying process on purpose. For tonight, because wish lists aren't revealed until September 12th, the mentors won't be able to answer any questions about genres or their wish lists. So just a heads up. If you're watching on Twitter, like if someone posted this on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and you're kind of watching embedded in there, you are going to want to click on through to YouTube if you can, because that's where the chat is going to be happening. And that is also where you can ask questions. However, Lee, our Pitch Wars social media director, is watching, and she is also watching the Pitch Wars Twitter as well. So if you do ask a question on Twitter, she might be able to bring it over as long as she sees it. And also I want to thank Brenda Drake, who is moderating the chat today. She's in the chat, just keeping an eye on things. So, and you can go ahead and start asking questions now while the mentors are introducing themselves, so we can go ahead and get started. Submissions open on September 27th. We have a lot more chats coming up. I forgot the number, but 8 more chats, something like that. So you can find all of those are scheduled on my YouTube channel right here. And you can also find them, more information about them on the Pitch Wars blog post from a couple days ago. And now we're going to let the mentors introduce themselves. So let me just take down this pitchwars.org. Hopefully you have that. And here we go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carlyn Greenwald. I am a YA thriller author, and I am currently getting MFA in creative writing, and I work in development in Hollywood. I was a mentee in 2016. I was mentored by Rachel Lynn Solomon and Kit Frick, and I'm now agented, and now I'm going to be co-mentoring YA with Kit Frick, and I'm so excited.
You're muted, Kit.
And I'm muted. I guess unmuting would be a good thing to do. Yes, hi, I'm Kit, Carlyn's co-mentor. I have been involved with Pitch Wars since 2016, which was my first year mentoring. This is my 4th year mentoring now, and I'm super excited to be here with Carlyn. I'm the author of 3 young adult novels in the suspense, thriller, mystery umbrella. Most recently is I Killed Zoe Spanos, which just came out this summer. And I think that is all you need to know for now.
Hi, my name is Ayana Gray. I write young adult fantasy, for the most part, really speculative fiction, and I am the author of the upcoming Beasts of Prey, coming at you with Putnam and Penguin Random House in 2022. Last year, I was a mentor with Pitch Wars. This is my 2nd year as a mentor, and I'm also, I've been a part of the Pitch Wars Advisory Committee.
Hi, I'm Emily Thiede. I was a 2017 Pitch Wars mentee, and now I am a speculative fiction author. My debut YA fantasy is coming out with Wednesday Books at Macmillan in 2022, and I'm really excited to be back into the Pitch Wars game.
All right, I'm Dante Medema, and I write young adult books. My debut novel is back there. It's The Truth Project. It's out October 13th, and this is my first year mentoring Pitch Wars with my co-mentor, Liz Lawson.
All right, thank you, everyone. We already have a couple questions, and I did forget to mention, if it's a question that's like just a very quick rules question, I'll probably just answer it and go on to the next one. So the first question is, should queries include personalization for each mentor, or should the pitch stand on its own? And that's one of those questions, like I mentioned. When you submit your submission, the same query goes to all 4 mentors. And so we actually ask you not to personalize for the mentors. Yeah, so are we able to enter if we revised our manuscript with a freelance editor, or would that disqualify us from submitting to pitchwars? It won't disqualify you. I'll tell you that right off the front, but maybe the panelists have something to say about freelance editors, or if you want to say anything, if you have any comments. No?
I can jump in because I work as a freelance editor in addition to being an author. It's absolutely not necessary to hire a freelance editor to work with before you submit to pitchwars. I say this as someone who does this as part of my living. If you feel that you can benefit from it, then certainly that's an avenue that you can pursue in revision. Equally as beneficial could be working with a beta reader or a writing group. I do recommend getting feedback on your manuscript and on your query materials before you submit, but there are lots of ways you can do that. We have a Pitchwars forum where you can post queries and get feedback from other people applying to Pitchwars. So working with a freelance editor is just one of many avenues to getting feedback that you can consider.
All right, cool. Tamara asks, Tamara is in Australia, I think. Tamara, I always forget. I'm sorry, Tamara. If you could be any character from a book, who would you be?
That's a good one. I'm going to take it as the, instead of the wish fulfillment, the who I most actually am. And I'm going to say I'm a bit of a Hermione Granger. Like, I realize J.K. Rowling, we're going to put her aside. But I think as much as I like to think I'm the rebel who would save the world, I'm much more of the rule follower who raises her hand in class. So I'm just going to own that and accept it.
I see Dante's looking like trying to find a book.
I mean, I just finished reading Gideon the Ninth, so like, of course, I would love to be Gideon because that would mean I could be tall and like hold swords and also be witty. So like, ideal in this scenario.
Anybody else?
I'll jump in. I was like, ooh, it's a tie. I'm gonna go with Bree from Legendborn by Tracy Dion. That book's technically not out yet, but it will be in like a week or two. But I got to read that a few months ago, and that, I mean, like, to be honest, Bree is just this like really cool magical black chick from the South, and that's me. Like, not cool, just like black chick from the South. And I'm like, I wish I could be her and have that ferocity and that boldness and also magic. So I'm gonna go with Bree from Legendborn.
I feel like I've always identified with Anne from Anne of Green Gables, except minus the red hair. So, you know, I like aspirational red hair Anne.
All right. Did Emily answer? Oh, okay. Sorry, I forgot. Dante, did you answer?
No, I was trying to, and then there's like a technical thing.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, maybe Katniss, so I could shoot bows and arrows.
That's a good one.
I read a lot of like contemporary stuff, so it's sad. I'm like, I don't want to be sad.
All right. Ellie has a question. If a story is 3 POVs, point of views, would you expect to see that mentioned in the query if my query focuses on the main character?
I can jump in, but I answered the last one, so I want to defer to someone else. But if no one else is going to take it, I will quickly say, and then maybe someone else will have a different opinion on this. I think that one line at the beginning of the query saying like my multi-POV YA contemporary or fantasy or whatever it is suffices. And then it's good to focus generally on one character. If you have a multi-POV manuscript, it can be difficult to balance that in a query. So I think your strategy is a good one. But yeah, I would say like just one brief mention at the top would work for me.
Yeah, I would say I'm never going to rule out a book. Like if I'm reading and I discover a new point of view and I didn't realize there were 3, it's not going to stress me out. I think, and I don't know if I can speak for everyone, but I think for the most part, people are looking for that every point of view has a purpose, that it's being used strategically, it's being used for a reason, and that point of view character is going to actually have some sort of an arc or a journey. I always think it's good as writers if we stop and ask ourselves if every point of view is there because that character deserves a point of view versus whether we're adding it because we're trying to like feed the reader more information that we can't figure out a better way to do it. And I think as long as the point of view is justified, I'm not going to worry about whether or not it shows up in the query. If the query gives me an idea of the story and then I'm reading and I discover a new point of view character, as long as it feels justified, it doesn't bother me whether it shows up in the query or not.
I was going to say, I agree. And I was going to say that if you want a good like mini tutorial on like how to effectively capture, and Goodreads is a really good place, just reading blurbs off of books. And when you asked that, I thought about actually Six of Crows. You know, there's 6 POVs. And if you go look at Goodreads and how that book is pitched, you know, I think there's a mention of, you know, a criminal, a witch, a soldier, like and I think There Will Come a Darkness by Katie Rose Poole does it as well. Like it mentions there are going to be 5 main characters. If there's one that kind of rises to the top, they get a little bit more time. But I think there's a way to basically say there's going to be a group of people, 3 people, 5 people in a succinct way. I guess my preference is to kind of know going in because it changes the way I approach my reading. Like it's jarring for me if I am investing in chapter 1 in a certain person and then all of a sudden chapter 2 we're not with that person anymore. So I think it doesn't hurt to mention it, but it really depends on the nature of your story. If it's going to be a story where all 3 POVs really matter, or if it's going to be a story where there's one focal person and then there are also just there happen to be 2 others as well, like Emily said.
Did you see the way Emily just casually drank out of that Pitchwars mug? You're muted again.
Pitchwars mug, Pitchwars shelf, all the Pitchwars.
Nice. All right, anyone else want to chime in on the 3 PVs question? All right. So Lee has a question, I'm assuming from Twitter. For those of you who are a mentee in the past, what surprised you about the Pitchwars experience? Was it what you expected?
I guess I could take this. So to reiterate, I was a mentee in 2016. I think the one thing that surprised me the most was like, they always talk about community and like, that was so true, but it wasn't even community. Like I'm still like great friends with my mentors as clearly stated by the I'm working with Kit now thing. But even just like my one friend that I met someone where we had CP'd each other's work before we had submitted, and like her book literally just got announced, and like we still CP for every single work we've done. So like the community can form like outside of just like your immediate mentor and like beyond that. So like the entire community, like everyone touched by it, even people who don't get into Pitch Wars, you can still like make that community through just participating in the process. I thought that was amazing. So that's mostly what surprised me in a good way.
Yeah, I would say, I think I imagined that the period of time that I was going to be a mentee was going to be the most formative, that I would learn everything I needed to learn. I would get launched to stardom. That didn't happen. And then that would be it. It was that back in 2017, it was about a 2 to 3 month span. It was pretty condensed. And what ended up happening was really that I started to make connections during the mentorship, but it was really that final stretch when we were going into the showcase. We started everyone was really proud of their manuscripts and really stressed out and really nervous because it's scary when you start to share the work you've been working on. And I actually did not realize it was me until I went back in our Facebook group, but apparently I was the person that said, you know, who wants to swap books? And we just started, you know, just sharing our manuscripts with each other. And so at the very kind of home stretch of this process, we were reading each other's work. We were getting excited about it. We were starting to form real relationships in a way that hadn't even happened during the actual, you know, revision process. And so I think the thing that was most fascinating for me was that it wasn't this set period of time. That was just the launch pad. Those were the relationships that we formed at the end of it that have now continued, that have become hugely important. That half of my bookshelf are people that I now consider some of my best friends. And I did not get an agent through the showcase. I did not get an agent with that book. I had to write another book. I did another mentorship. That also did not get me an agent. I had to write another book, and then I queried. I got an agent. I got a book deal, and I'm thrilled. So I would say the fact that it's just a start, and you can form those relationships even if you aren't accepted into the program. And also just to remember that in the world of publishing, it's not a yes or a no. It's, are you moving towards your goal or are you turning around? And so as long as you view every step in the process as are you using that in the best possible way to move yourself towards your goals, then you're going to be fine regardless.
Dante, did you have something to add? I saw you wave your hand.
No, I was just saying I'm one of those people that was not a mentee, but the community that like built up to everyone, you know, sharing each other's query letters and first pages. Those are the people that I found and are still some of my CPs today. So same. Yeah, you can still get a lot from it, even if you aren't chosen as a mentee.
Cool. All right, I need to say hi to Jay. Jay said, hey, pubbers, and you may see this, I saw it a couple times in the comments. Pubbers are what the people who watch my normal YouTube show call themselves. It's like my viewers, so hey, pubbers. All right, Dan asked, have your past mentees, I'm assuming, had a lot of success landing agents after this process? Mine was a mix, like some of them did and some of them haven't yet.
I'm a first timer, so
yeah,
not applicable.
I've had 4 mentees through pitchwars in the past. I had my first year mentoring. I mentored Carlyn and another mentee, and then I've had 2 others in subsequent years. 3 of them are agented. One is working on a new book, and Carlyn found her agent after pitchwars with a new manuscript that she had written. So sort of similar to Emily's story. And then I've had 2 mentees that found agents through or directly after the agent showcase. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a complete mix. And I think you're going to, any mentor that you speak with that has had several years of pitchwars experience, you know, there are varying results in terms of immediately finding an agent. And that's only sort of one purpose of this experience. I think, you know, it's really about the digging into revision and leveling up your writing and learning a lot about the querying process, and then carrying that forward into future manuscripts that you write, future querying experience, etc. So, you know, I think there might be a tendency to look at mentors and be like, oh, well, this one has, you know, 6 years of mentoring experience and all 6 of those mentees got agents. So like, that's who I want to work with. But a lot of it is luck and timing and things that have nothing to do with that mentor's acumen or anything like that. So I don't know how good of a metric that is of much of anything, but yeah, it's going to be a mix for everyone.
Yeah, I'll say, as someone who was a mentee who did not get an agent in that round, it had everything to do with the timing of the book in the market and nothing to do with my mentor at all. The skills that she taught me, honestly, I think were essential when I did get a book deal. I think she taught me to tap into a romance vein that was a present in all of my books that I had been afraid to explore. And once I really dug deep into that, it made my book so much better. And so I think it's really important to remember that the things that you learn from a mentorship go far beyond whether that book was the perfect book at the right time. And I still consider Pitchwars to have been one of the most significant kind of milestones and experiences of my publishing career, even though it didn't directly lead me to the book deal that I eventually got.
Yeah, and to bounce off of that, like I had the same experience where I didn't get an agent from the book that was in Pitchwars, but everything I learned through Pitchwars, like it just elevated everything I wrote after that, like to the umpteenth degree. Not to mention the fact that Kit and Rachel still read all of my future work. So like literally Kit like unlocked the book that I got the agent with. So like the relationships, they last so much longer than just the actual Pitchwars itself. And so like it was completely invaluable. Like I wouldn't have gotten the agent without having gone through Pitchwars, even though it was like 2 years later. It's all good. The market's weird.
Yeah. Well, like one of my mentees, she got an agent through Pitchwars, the showcase, and is a New York Times bestseller. Another mentee did not get an agent through the showcase and is a USA Today bestseller. Another one got her agent, didn't get any requests in the showcase, queried immediately and got several offers. And so it's just like a total mixed bag. I feel like one of the best books I've ever worked on, she didn't get any, I mean, she got like 1 or 2 requests in the showcase, but she didn't get any offers and she's still working on it. And I'm like, how? Like that book is so good, you know? So, all right. Justin asks, what in the mentor's opinion is the most important thing to pay attention to if chosen as a mentee?
I can jump in. I think for me, Liz and I have talked a lot about this, and we just want someone who's open to change and open to trying new things and open to learning. And that's like the biggest thing. You just have to be open and kind of go with the flow on that, but still hold your convictions if it's important.
I think the most important, and I'm just making sure I understand the question. The thing most important as a mentee to pay attention to, the mentor. I think when wish lists come out, read those really carefully. And I think it might have been Kit that said it before. Like I know the temptation is to pick a mentor that has books, lots of books, or all their past mentees have all signed with agents, or they know a lot of cool authors. Like I know all of those things are flashy, but really read. Like we're all behind the scenes thinking about these wish lists and spending a lot of time making sure that we're presenting ourselves honestly. Make sure that you pick a mentor that really fits you, reads the kind of stuff that you're interested in, and also their personality is similar to yours. So if you know that you need, and it's okay, if you know that you need somebody to kind of be a hand holder and check in, that's okay, but just be honest about that. If you really want to be left alone, then pay attention to those mentors who are saying, I'm a little more hands off. That's good practice for when you're querying with agents too. I know some agents seem really cool on Twitter and they have great record sales deals, but pay attention to the kind of stuff they read, pay attention to their personalities, because once you decided to work with that mentor, you're in it, and you want to make sure you're really aligned both on a bookish level, but also on a personality level.
Yeah, I'd say treat it like querying. I think the most important thing you can learn from Pitchwars is this program is set up to introduce you to the process of querying and to the process of publishing. And so when you're querying and you're looking for agents, you should be looking for someone that is the right fit for you, not just someone that has some arbitrary metric. And so it should be the same with a mentor. And it also should be viewed the same way in terms of, market makes a difference. Individual tastes make a difference. If you don't get picked, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with your book or wrong with your writing. It can just mean that the person that you sub to wasn't looking for that exact book at that time. So I think if you view it as a kind of a slightly safer maybe version of querying and version of publishing. And you go into it with the attitude of publishing is a difficult industry with a lot of rejection and a lot of, building connections and making relationships, then I think you're going to get something out of it regardless. So yeah, so I would definitely say to read those wish lists carefully and to think about what it is that you're looking for and to go into it with the intention of trying to improve your craft and becoming a stronger writer.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. Sorry, it's the youngest one's bedtime, and I guess she did not want to go to bed. But I like that you mentioned that it's like querying, and like Ayana can probably speak to this too. Like sometimes when we're making decisions, there are some things that we could do that might make things, nicer for mentees or whatever, but we make the conscious decision to not do that because we want them to prepare. We want them to know that, like, this is how the industry is. But you also have a mentor to guide you through it. So it's like, this is how the industry is, but also we're going to help you. And so, yeah, that was always everything that all the decisions that we make, we factor that in. So, all right. Bert, Jessica Borsey, sorry, she's one of our pubbers too. When you start reading, what generally convinces you to keep going, such as premise, voice, character, plot promise, etc.?
I can say I'm a pretty hard, like, I don't want to scare anybody. I'm a hard judge of that first line. Like there are lines of books that I remember because they're just so strong. And look, you don't have to have a perfect first line, but I love, if it's going to be voicey, like the voiciest. If it's going to have an incredible world building theme, like let it be go big on that first line. And then also when I'm reading queries, I'm a sucker for cool premises. So on the flip side, like obviously, like we all like well-written stuff, but if I see a premise that I'm like, whoa, I've never thought about that, that'll get me to keep reading. There are still premises from Pitchwars last year that I maybe didn't pick because I thought they were ready to go, whatever, but the premise is still there. And I'm like, I want to know what happened to that story because it was so cool. So premise and prose are my thing.
Come on, one of you has to go.
All right. I'll start. So the thing that's going to keep me reading is going to vary by book, I think. Something that Ayana said really resonated because, like, if it's a really voicey book, it's probably the voice that's going to keep me going. Whereas, like, if there is this really cool premise, then I probably want to find out more about that. But something that is, I think, universal when I'm reading Pitchwars submissions is I'm always looking for a match between what drew me in from the query and what I'm seeing in those first pages. So one thing that I'm always going to be looking for is, are you delivering the promise that you set up in the query? And different mentors are going to have different styles of reading submissions. So this only speaks for me, but I always read the query first and then I dip into the pages. That's my personal preference. So I'm going to be looking at, like, okay, what hooked me in that query letter, and is that happening in these pages? And if it's not, then I know that these query materials aren't ready yet, because there's either something that's not working in the query letter or there's something that's not working in the pages if they're not singing together. So that's something I'll always be on the lookout for every submission.
And I'll say I'm the opposite. I don't know whether to blame my editor mother or not, but there are books, I can open a book generally in a bookstore and read the first page and know whether I'm willing to ride along with that author for 50 pages. I'm not going to commit to reading a whole book if I don't know what the book is about. But if the prose is carefully crafted, if there's kind of a sense of rhythm and understanding of how language works, then I'm willing to, even if a premise doesn't capture my attention, but the writing is done in a way that suggests that the writer is careful and thoughtful, that there's a voice of a character, that I can connect with that character, then I'm willing to give them some time. I'm willing to see where it is that they're going. I love a great premise, But I think first and foremost, I'm a character-based person, and I'm someone who I respond to prose as it is treated thoughtfully. There isn't that there was one right or wrong way to handle prose. It's more just whether or not I feel that writer has put a lot of thought into the words on the page, which again is not a right or wrong thing. It's just a me thing. So I tend to be someone who starts with the pages. And if I can connect with that character and with that prose on the page, then I'm going to go and look at the premise and the concept. And if those two things both work for me, then it's, big flashing gold stars and lights. But for me personally, when I read a great concept and I can't connect with the character, that makes me sadder, I guess. So I like to kind of start with the pages and see if I can connect first. Because I do think you can teach voice. I think you can teach prose. But I think it's a much more nuanced concept. Whereas I know it's very easy to have a great concept and have a great voice and have great prose, but not know how to write a query letter, because queries are really hard. So I'm very forgiving, I guess I would say, when it comes to a query letter and a pitch, because I think if you know your character and you know what story you're trying to tell, we can figure out a way to pitch it.
Yeah, I'd say for me, I'm one of those people who reads the query first. And so premise will be the first thing that grabs me. And then when it comes to the pages, voice is obviously the number one thing for me. If I want to hang out with this character, be in their head, I will steamroll through whatever amount of pages you have. But I also definitely look for tension and being able to identify what if the character has a goal and what they want and sort of where their agency lies within the story. And if that's set up right away, then I'll be more likely to be oh my God, I need to see what happens next. Obviously, those are all things that can also be worked on in a revision process, but for sure, having sort of that sense of just sort of knowing how the character goes through their normal lives, but in a way where you're okay, this is how they handle conflict. So now I know sort of what they could be with the bigger conflict, for sure, is important to me.
All right, that leaves me. So I've never done this before, so I don't know what kind of reader for queries I am, whether I do one over the other, but I will say in my reading life, I always need something that's voicey. Those things just attract me and suck me in, and I can't stop. That being said, if it's something weird or different, I want to know what's going to happen.
All right. We have a question about the synopsis. How do you go about tightening up your synopsis, deciding which details are necessary and which ones to leave out?
There is a really good article on PubCrawl about how to write a one-page synopsis that I point everybody to. And I actually think Susan Dennard wrote it, and she uses Star Wars. And it's just a really, she uses the actual Star Wars synopsis, and then you can actually copy and paste the template she uses. And then that's actually how I write my synopses. And the thing is, you end up going a bit long, and that's okay. And then you just go over it over and over again and start plucking things out, take out adverbs, adjectives, I think. And people, I know there aren't any hard, fast rules, but generally a synopsis really only mentions 2 or 3 characters unless there's a really special circumstance. So with tightening it, it's there's no easy way to do it, but it's just, I word vomit, write as much as you can, and then just go through and start plucking out, almost like you're putting stuff through a sieve, like a sieve kind of, and then just filtering each round. Gosh, yeah. And get friends to read it and say, what did you get? What is the story about? And then if it matches up, then you've hit it. And the other thing is honestly, I've never met an agent or editor who said, sorry, I'm not going to take your story because one line went over, or it wasn't 500 words even, or whatever. Get as close as you can within reason. If it's a 2-page synopsis, try to stick to 2, but it's not the end of the world if you can't do exactly 2 pages. But that PubCrawl article, I think if you type how to write a 1-page synopsis PubCrawl into Google, you'll find it, because everybody references it. It's fabulous.
Yeah, I'll add on to that and say, if anyone has not seen, and a lot of people haven't, if you go to YouTube and you search for the creators of South Park, have a video where they explain to people that are writing screenplays and TV shows, I think it's But Therefore, and they basically detail how they write the plot of a story, which is every event that happens in a story should be connected by but or therefore. So basically everything should lead to the next thing or prevent the next thing. So I think a lot of us think of a synopsis as a way to summarize everything that's important in a story. And I don't actually think that's the point. I have a secret suspicion that agents and other people only ask for synopses because they want to be sure that your character is actually driving the story. So if your synopsis has a whole lot of unrelated events, if it's just stuff that keeps happening, that's a red flag for agents, and it could theoretically be for mentors as well. Whereas if you're focusing on what does your character do that causes the next thing to happen, or what is an event that happens that stops your character from moving to the next point, if every single significant plot point is either moving them forward or setting them backwards, then you have the key elements of a story. So I would highly recommend that everyone just go on Google and search for South Park, But Therefore, and it's some combination of prepositions, but I think really when you're trying to pare it down, what you're trying to do is basically just clue the reader into the fact that your main character or characters are doing things that make stuff happen. And it's actually less important what happens and more important that they are the ones that are causing things to happen. And I hope that makes sense.
I was going to throw to go look at another example. I just think sometimes the best way to learn how to do something is to see it in action. So go pick a book that's well known, that you know really, really well, and just go look up synopsis for said book. And you'll see, because you'll be like, oh, they didn't mention this, they didn't say this, they didn't mention that character at all. And it'll make sense to kind of just like see it in action and see it, a real example of it, I think can help. And you can even kind of frame your work off, or your synopsis off of that example. Sometimes that's helpful.
My rule of thumb is you just write the story out and then get rid of all of the subplots. So it's just the main events, and then keep whittling away until it is under 2 pages.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think when I've worked with mentees and editorial clients in the past on synopses that start out much too long, often the problem is the writer is detailing the book scene by scene, because synopsis is a summary of everything that happens, right? And so we're going to write out every scene. And so instead, if you're starting with a draft that is overlong, instead of thinking about it as a description of each scene, think about it, like Dante said, as a description of each main plot event. So I think that often many scenes don't need to be mentioned at all, and you're just going for those key plot events. And plot is really key in a synopsis. I think, like I believe Emily said, we're looking for how the character is driving the story, but also for just basics of what happened. And I think it's getting down to those basics that is what makes synopses such a beast, because you're like, I can't cut anything. It all has to be in here, but you can. So kill the subplots, kill the secondary characters, key events.
All right, I just dropped both of those things, the But Therefore video that Emily mentioned and the pub crawl post that Ayana mentioned in the chat, so you can grab those links, hopefully. All right, I lost my place in the questions. So Hannah asked a question that y'all can't answer. Would any of you consider taking on a verse novel? But yes, mentors who specifically would like to work on verse novels will mention that in their wish lists. And if you do and you haven't mentioned it yet, you still have time to edit your wish list. So good news. I guess especially for those of you who have been mentors before, what is your selection process, especially with such a high number of applications? Do you all request fulls, or does it depend? And I will say people have wildly different strategies on this. So you may get several different answers and they still won't be the same as other people's.
Yeah, I can talk about mine. And I'm one of those people that I like transparency. I like not being super secretive because it's annoying, and a lot of stuff in publishing is secretive as it is. So I don't want to contribute to that. Full disclosure, last year, I think I got around 260, and I decided to read all of my submissions as soon as we were able to. I just dedicated that weekend to going through. I looked at queries first, and then if I liked the query, narrowed that down to reading opening lines and first chapters. So from there, it went even smaller. And my goal was, I had an Excel spreadsheet with pivot tables that were color coded, and I had yeses, nos, maybes. Sarah will appreciate this because they know that I really enjoy pivot tables and spreadsheets. And so I just narrowed. And then when I think I got down to my top 20 or top 10 even, I think that's when I started sending fulls out to read a little bit more, because you'll find that sometimes the first chapter is really excellent. And then when you get into that second chapter, that's when things kind of falter a bit. And so from the top 20, went down to my top 10, top 5, whatever. I don't know if I'll do all that this year. So anybody that looks at this later, don't hold me to that. But once I got down to a smaller group, that's when I started actually, Sarah, hopefully I'm allowed to say this. I reached out to people and just asked a few very basic questions like, hey, is that okay? trade secret. I only ask people who write XYZ genre, that would not be okay. Nope. No, I asked kind of what do you consider the heart of your story? And my mentee Hannah last year, we were just talking about this because that was the thing she and I talked about throughout our process. What is the heart of your story? What is the one thing you would not change? And that's actually what my agent asked me when I signed with him. So that's why I asked that. Because if there's something that you just are firmly I will not change it, then that lets me know that's not a bad thing. But if that's the thing that I want to change, then I'm maybe I'm not the best mentor for you. And then I asked, do you prefer hands-on? Do you prefer hands-off? And I think I asked one other thing, but just kind of those final get-to-know-you questions to figure out, I already like your work. Now I need to kind of get to know you as a person. And if that happens to you, if a mentor reaches out, it's cool. And there are some mentors who will reach out in different stages. Be very, 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 very honest about don't try to impress anybody. If you, like I said before, if you need someone to kind of be very checking in and hands holding, say that. Don't try to, I don't need any help. Be very clear, be very transparent, because they're making a real decision off of those answers. And you're not going to get in trouble, but better to pick a mentor that you'll gel with because you were honest. And then, so yeah, I'm really methodical. I do a narrowing down thing, and that's me. Got through that without getting in any trouble.
See, Ayana, so this is what cracks me up about writing, is that Ayana and I talk almost every day. We send voice messages back and forth, and we are the opposite because I am all emotion and no organization. I will try to make spreadsheets, but they're going to be a mess. What's going to happen with me, I know, is that I'm going to just feel a connection with various manuscripts. I'm going to request the full because I don't have the patience to wait for multiple steps. And then I'm going to read things as fast as I can, and I'm going to fall in love with things as fast as I can. And it's just going to be a very kind of gut level instinct sort of thing. And again, what I think is so important to remember is that's we're in this bizarre industry that it's a business, but it's a business based on what people love. And so, you can drive yourself up the wall trying to figure out how to strategize the best you can, but that's not how books work, because books are a little piece of your heart and soul that's just laid out on the page. And so I would say, pick a mentor that you connect with, pick a mentor who their wish list seems to be in line with what you want, but also remember that it's very hard for mentors and for authors to summarize everything that they have to offer in a very little bit of, word page, which is not a word. I swear my books are better than my speaking language. But I remember when I submitted to Pitchwars, the mentor who ended up choosing me was someone that I struggled with. There was one line on her wish list that I thought, well, I don't know if she would like my main character based on what she said. And, she requested it 5 minutes after I sent it in, and she fought for it fiercely. And so I think at the end of the day, all you can do is kind of make the best choice you can make and trust that we are going to make the best choices we can make, and that it's going to be somewhat objective, but also somewhat subjective. So yeah, I don't have a strategy. It's going to be a lot of like hitting buttons on my computer and being excited about stuff.
Spoiler alert, that's exactly how agents are.
Yeah, I mean, there are some agents that are super strategic and some that are just all heart and no strategy. And that's publishing. That's book buyers,
It never stops, ever.
I'll just say, Carlyn and I have not yet put our heads together about what our exact request strategy will be yet. So I can't say specifically if we'll be requesting partials first and then fulls, or go straight to fulls, but we'll figure it out by the time it becomes relevant. But in the past, I've done both, and I think that is pretty representative of most mentors. Like, some mentors will only request fulls, some will request partials and fulls, like a mix of both. Some will request partials and then fulls. I mean, it really is all over the board, and it also will be personal to the mentor whether they will request, like, what quantity of requests that they will make. And most of us don't really know until we get into our inbox. So there isn't much more specificity that I can give you. But Ayana's note about asking questions, I can say I've done that in the past at the point of making a request. And that's likely, again, Carla and I haven't totally strategized about this yet, but that's likely what we'll do this year, at least at some point in the process. I also find those little Q&As to be super helpful. And something that I will be looking for is, does the mentee hopeful actually get back to me? Because that's a big red flag for a mentor. If we reach out asking some questions and we don't hear back, or we hear back like 2 weeks later, that signals to me that you're maybe not super interested in working with me. So, you don't need to turn it around in an hour. Like, don't feel like super stressed about this or anything. But if you do get asked for a partial or a full or questions, any sort of request from a mentor, we are going to be looking for, do you get back to us in, like a reasonable amount of time, within a day or two? Did you pay close attention to the questions that we asked and answer them in a thoughtful and comprehensive way? So those are things that will be good to pay attention to after you submit to Pitchwars.
Yeah, even though Ayana and I love spreadsheets with unholy passion, but I'm a mechanical engineer, but my reading process was like chaotic. I don't know. I'm so organized in the rest of my life, but for some reason when I read submissions, just everything goes out the window. And basically, if I get to the end of the sample and I'm still reading, then I just request a full. But I'm also very picky, so I get to the end of very few samples. So, all right, let's see if we have. So we have a question from Elle that's just going to be one of those quick things that I'm just going to say no and move on. Is looking at a mentor's favorite books a good way to select who to submit to? No. There's wish lists come out on September 12th. Read those because they will be much more extensive than their favorite books. And Maria asked a question about weird and really specific things you would love to see in a project, and they can't answer that, so sorry. But they are, I think all of them are doing Twitter chats later. And so after the 12th, they will answer that question. So make sure you find them on Twitter. And my thing just jumped around again and I lost all the, that's where the questions were.
But those are also things that, I'll just jump in while you're getting organized. Things that wish list will be really illuminating about, because often we'll go beyond just those little favorite book lists that are on the Pitchwars website now and talk about, often mentors will include lots of examples of things that they're really into, and often they will include weird things and tropes and like things that they'd be super excited to see in a submission. So the wish list will, once that blog hop goes up on the 12th, I believe, that will be a great way to dig into all of that stuff.
Kylie just saw Emily, or not just, but at 7:14, which is where we are in the questions, just saw you're next behind Emily. Oh, here's a good question.
I was trying to show off all the 2017 mentees on my bookshelf.
Here's a really good question. If I don't get picked up for Pitch Wars, what do you recommend I do next? This will probably be our last question of this group, unless y'all are just really fast.
I'd say to ask yourself what sort of feedback you've gotten from other areas. If you've gone through beta readers, if you've had critique partners, if everybody says they love it, then I'd say start querying. Start slowly and see what happens. But you know, you're subbing to what, 4 mentors? That's 4 people on the entire planet. You're asking them if of all the books they could choose to work on for a few months, your book is the book they're going to choose. And if they don't pick your book, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your book at all. And if you feel like you're ready, if you've put in the work, if you've revised it and you think it's ready, then I would start querying. Again, go slow. There's time to take it slowly and see what happens. If you are thinking, well, you wrote a first draft and you revised it really quickly and you submitted to Pitch Wars and you didn't get any nibbles, then maybe it's time to go and find critique partners, and revise it a little bit more. But it really depends on where you are and what you're ready for.
So I want to speak to this because I applied to Pitch Wars in 2015 and I did not get in. And so I can tell you exactly what I did. So I followed the Pitch Wars schedule as if I were a mentee for revising my book. So I did get a little bit of feedback from mentors that I'd applied to, and then I formed. We had a little Facebook group, I think, with some other mentee hopefuls that didn't get selected that all wrote in the same genre. And so I swapped my manuscript with a couple other people that I met through the Pitch Wars community, even though I wasn't a mentee. And so I had a goal of starting to query at the time that the agent showcase went up, because that was when all the mentees were finishing their revision too. So I set that deadline for myself and I sent out that first query right when the showcase went up, and I queried right along with all the other mentees, and I signed my agent and that book became my debut. So it worked out for me.
That's brilliant, Kit.
Okay. I will say, as someone who applied for Pitch Wars and did not get in, I did not necessarily take the advice of the mentors that had given me feedback. And I was like, no, I want to query. I'm fine. It didn't work out. So I would say take your time. Make sure that you are getting a group of people to read it and revise it. And yeah, just feel like there's no good answer to this, because everyone is in a different place in their writing life. And so everyone is going to have a different response, and your answer is really up to where your book is. So it's just different for every person.
Just real quick, if Rebecca, if you're watching, I see you're trying to get in and our studio is currently full. So you'll be able to get in right when we say goodbye to the first 5 mentors, just a heads up. I hope she's watching, or if you know her and you can text her that too. Okay, anybody else want to answer that question?
Can I add my last little bit of advice as a former mentee? So as a former mentee who, again, did not, get like catapulted to superstardom immediately, but now is exactly where I want to be. I'm going to say this every single day for the rest of my life. Pitch Wars is an amazing opportunity. if you get in and it doesn't get you immediately where you want to go, that's fine. If you don't get in, but you make some friends, you make some connections, that's great. Like, it's not a golden ticket. It can be, but it usually isn't. That's not how life works. That's not how publishing works. So I would just say, you know, apply to it or don't, whatever feels right to you. But like, connect with the community, try to meet some people, use it as a motivation to hit a deadline, to connect with other people. But like, don't feel like you have to put all of your eggs in one basket, because again, like it didn't get me the book deal, but it still moved me forward. And honestly, even if I hadn't gotten accepted, I still think it would have, because I still would have met the people who would have helped me improve as a writer and connect with other people. So it's just, I know it feels like it's kind of everything is win or lose, but that's really not how anything works in publishing. So just kind of give it your best and keep trying is my pep talk.
Rebecca, I was thinking about Rebecca because she's trying to get in. Brenda, the founder of Pitch Wars, says, I was never a mentee, but I've gotten so much out of Pitch Wars.
Brenda!
She always says, I never got to be a mentee. Like, she created the program. All right, so we have about 4 minutes left with y'all. So if you could each kind of let us know where to find you online, what you have coming up. Feel free to promote your books at this point, whatever is going on, and we'll just go ahead and go in order, starting with Carlyn.
Let's see. My Twitter handle is @Carlyn Greenwald. My Instagram is Carlyn_GEE. I don't have any books to plug, so I will plug Kit's book. I Killed Zoe Spanos, out right now. Then I'll also plug Rachel Lynn Solomon's book, Today, Tonight, Tomorrow. They're both fantastic, and you should buy them.
I can be found online at Kit Frick on both Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest. And my website is kitfrick.com. And I'm at Kit Frick Author on Facebook, but I am not there very much. And since Carlyn already plugged my book for me, I'm done here.
You can find me on Twitter at Ayana Gray, and you can find me on Instagram at Ayana Gray with an underscore on the end, because that it would be too easy for me to just get to have both, even though I don't know any other Ayanas. But also, you can add Beasts of Prey. I just got to announce that it's going to be a book. So of course, I'm like very interested in Goodreads ads, please. And I also didn't get to say it, but I'm co-mentoring with the fabulous Maya Ibrahim. Her debut, Spice Road, comes out next year. Go add that one on Goodreads, because I've read it and I think it's awesome. Go follow her at Maya Ibrahim. And yeah, she's fabulous. That's all I have.
I think I'm Emily Thiede. I think my handle is there, which is good because it's impossible to spell out loud because all the letters rhyme. You can also find me at ekthiede.com or ektwrites on Instagram. And my debut is the first of a YA fantasy duology, which is kind of, I think my editor has described it as a rom-com hidden inside a dark YA fantasy. It's about a young girl who is supposed to use her powers to channel someone else's magic to save the world, but she keeps killing people instead. So she gets a grumpy bodyguard to help her out because everyone wants to kill her. And it's called The Last Fenestra, and you can also add that on Goodreads as well. And, you know, I'm biased, but I think it's pretty good. So.
All right, that leaves me. I am Dante Medema. You can find me at Dante Medema on Twitter, and then at Dante Medema Books on Instagram, because couldn't be that easy.
Did she freeze for everyone else or just me?
Which is, am I still frozen?
I think you're back.
Am I? Am I still frozen, or am I good?
I hear you.
Oh, okay, good. I don't know where I left off. Okay, cool. Where did I leave off?
Instagram.
Oh, wow. Okay, that was a while ago. So my book comes out on October 13th. It's The Truth Project, and I'm going to also plug my co-mentor's book, Liz Lawson's The Lucky Ones. And I think that's it, right? I'm done?
Yeah, it's right there on Emily's bookshelf.
Yeah, her. She's the worst.
It flips it, you guys. I swear I'm not. It's just hard to point when the screen flips it, but it's there somewhere.
It doesn't mirror, which is what we're used to.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I've been doing this for over a year and I'm still not used to it. All right. Well, thank y'all so much for joining us today. You can find them on Twitter, and we're going to bring in 5 new mentors. So if y'all could just close out your window and say goodbye to everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Bye, guys.
All right. So Rebecca, if you're watching, you can sign in now. I saw you just tried to do it like 30 seconds ago. So go ahead and try again. And we'll bring everyone on. I'm going to have each of you introduce yourselves solo, and hopefully by then Rebecca will be with us. So Jennieke, you're coming on screen right now. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, just kind of say what you write, if you have any books out, and your pitchwars history.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennieke Cohen, and I am the author of Dangerous Alliance, which is a historical YA, and that's what I write, historical YA. And I was a 2016 mentee, pitchwars mentee, and I was a mentor in 2018, co-mentor with Toby Easton, and I'm really looking forward to mentoring again.
All right, Liz, you are coming on next. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. I am Liz Lawson, and I was a Pitchwars mentor last year in 2019, as well as in 2020. I am co-mentoring with Dante, who you just met. Oh my gosh, this really is hard. Somewhere over there. Oh, here we go. My debut, The Lucky Ones, came out on April 7th, 2020. And it is a YA contemporary that was released via Delacorte Press. And I am very excited to be here.
All right, Andrea.
Hi, I am Andrea Contos. I have a book that just debuted on September 1st, along with like 500 million other people. It's called Throwaway Girls, and I also have a 2-book deal coming out with Scholastic. So I'll have a book called Out of the Fire coming in 2021, and then a book that I have not titled yet in 2022. I was a 2017 Pitchwars mentee, and actually Throwaway Girls was the book that I got into Pitchwars with. So definite Pitchwars success story. And then I've been a mentor in 2018 and 2019, and here we are, 2020.
And Kylie.
Hey everyone, I'm Kylie Schachte. I'm the author of Your Next, which was my Pitchwars 2017 mentee book. It came out this year in July. And I was also a co-mentor last year with Addie Basom, who is also mentoring this year, but we're going solo. Hopefully I don't have to like DM her constantly asking for advice now that I'm trying this out on my own. So yeah, I was a co-mentor last year and just solo single mentor this year. Yeah, I think that about covers everything.
All right, and Becca has joined us. So Becca, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Becca Mix. I write fantasy, like kidlit fantasies, so YA and middle grade. This is my first year mentoring Pitchwars, and I'm really excited. I'm co-mentoring with Grace Lee. So yeah, we're super psyched. I'm excited to be here.
All right, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. And I'm going to go and find where I was in the questions. We're still answering questions from 7:20 p.m. So heads up, that's where we are in the questions. So here's a question from Emily. If you're querying, would you suggest pausing for Pitchwars or just continuing with traditional querying? What might be the signs either way?
Okay, I'll talk. I think that's kind of up to you. I can say personally, I sent out less than 10 queries before I entered Pitchwars, and I really just kind of wanted to get an idea of whether or not my first page was working and my query was working before I tried it out on Pitchwars Mentors.
I got a really, really good response. So part of me was kind of like, hey, maybe I should just, go ahead and ride this out and send out some more. And I don't think that would have been the wrong response. I think I could have easily taken that route, and who knows what might have happened. But to me, Pitch Wars was kind of this thing that I really, really wanted to do. And I just kind of thought, this might be the difference between sending out a ton of queries and getting a lot of full requests and then getting a whole lot of rejections. And maybe this book could actually make it. So for me, it was worth it to put it on pause and just kind of ride it out and wait and see what happened with Pitch Wars. And then I could kind of confidently go in and query more if I didn't get into Pitch Wars. But if I did, then at least I'd, have the opportunity to go over the book with people who really knew what they were doing and kind of let them guide me into, what sort of things needed to be fixed. And I can honestly say I not for 1 second regret the choice that I made. I wouldn't go back and do it differently for anything.
Yeah, I can jump in. I totally agree with what Andrea's saying. I think in some ways, like Pitch Wars and querying are kind of serve two different goals. With Pitch Wars, you're sort of going into it assuming that there are editorial issues that need to be addressed in your book that you're looking to get some help fixing, and also, kind of generally grow your writing craft, which would in some ways suggest that maybe the book isn't ready for querying, because if that there are issues with it, ideally you want it to be as polished as possible. But that said, I think it's really tricky sometimes to know, it's such a fine line between when something's query ready or not. Also, what is query ready for one agent versus another could be totally different. So I think just the thing to maybe be a little bit cautious of, and this is, I think, true whether you're looking to apply to Pitch Wars or not, is just to not go whole hog on querying from day one and send 100 queries out all in one go. I think just doing it sort of in small batches and getting a sense of what kind of response am I getting? Are people responding well to my query, my early pages? Am I getting a ton of full requests and then, getting rejections pretty shortly thereafter? I think can all kind of point towards there's other sort of larger structural issues that something like Pitch Wars might help you to address. So I think nothing wrong with doing some querying before you go the Pitch Wars route, or even querying up until Pitch Wars, but just for your own sake, so that you don't burn through too many agents, I think I would be cautious about the number I'm sending out. And then also from, thinking about it more from the perspective of a mentor, I would be a little bit hesitant about taking on a book where the query history included every agent on the face of the earth. That might be a little bit trickier to get around. Not necessarily a total cast in stone deal breaker, because agents will definitely, or some agents at least, will take another look at things if substantial revisions are made. But that would just maybe be something I would ask about and have a little bit of pause over from the mentor side of things.
I'll jump in unless someone else is. No, anyway, I agree with everything that's been said completely. And I think the less maybe I think we're living in a world right now that is different than most querying seasons. And so I would say that I've been hearing, and granted this is anecdotal, but that agents are going to be less inclined right now to be taking on anything that hasn't been, polished to the nth degree. And so possibly it would be a better idea to apply to Pitch Wars if you're thinking about it already, and then, see what happens. And then at that point, maybe you'll get some feedback, maybe you'll get in, and maybe at the very least, you'll get feedback from other mentee hopefuls, which would then help you polish it more before you send it out and query a bunch of agents. And, obviously the conventional wisdom, as Kylie and Andrea said, was just kind of from a mentor perspective, you don't necessarily want something that's been queried to 100 agents, because it's going to make things difficult, because there are only so many agents, especially in certain genres. So yeah, I would say maybe waiting is a good idea, especially in the climate we're in.
Yeah, and I'll add that I think not even from a mentor perspective, but just as from a querying perspective, I know that I always, when I was querying, wanted to just get my stuff out there and have it in front of agents, which is not necessarily a good idea. You know, querying, there's no rush is what I'm trying to say. And like taking a couple months is not going to be the end of the world. Applying to pitchwars, holding on, querying, seeing what happens. And if you are applying to pitchwars, like other people have said, it's probably because you think that there's something in your manuscript that could be, you know, polished or worked on. And if that's the case, you don't want to, this is a weird way of saying it, but you don't want to like waste agents by querying them and not being completely ready. Because I've done that with books in the past, and you regret it afterward. You're like, oh my God, I wish that I had just waited and been a little bit more patient.
All right, great. Maria asked a question I can answer very quickly. Will mentors be posting things they're good at versus bad at, helping with, along with their wish lists? Example, good at query letter help, good at romance arcs, etc. Yes. Next question. What are the biggest successes you have heard from pitchwars, or things that you're most proud of? Those are very different questions.
I can go. So as someone who actually never did pitchwars, and this is my first time mentoring, I have a lot of friends that found writing community through it. So like, I know we all like, I know everyone wants an agent and everyone wants a book deal. But a lot of my good friends, like this is the first time they found critique partners. Like I've mentored for other writing mentorship programs before, and I still talk to my mentees. They're my friends. So I think out of anything, like if you are like looking to be a part of this community, right? And you know, you are trying to get an agent and you're like trying to move forward, finding those people who are going to be on that journey with you is kind of critical. And pitchwars seems to kind of have that down. So I don't know how you guys do it, but you seem to attract the, the right kind of community.
Yeah, I'll add that like I know everybody always says like the community is the real prize, blah, blah, blah. And like, trust me, I am the most eye-rolly, like, yeah, whatever kind of person about that type of thing. And went into my own 2017 mentee experience being like, okay, dude, like I'll come out of this with an agent. That's fine. Like, I don't need the rest of that. And like, I'm a full-blown evangelist, like convert at this point. So yeah, and I think part of the reason why I'm so cynical is because I'm somebody who has a little bit of trouble like finding friends in online spaces when I can't see people face to face. It's a little harder for me to feel like, when is it cool to reach out, and navigating all of that like awkwardness of like, okay, we've been like exchanging like replies on Twitter for a while. Like, when is it cool for me to DM this person? Like it's hard for me to navigate that stuff. And I think the same is true for a lot of people. Like I always feel when I'm on Twitter, like I'm stuck at some kind of like awful social networking like cocktail party with like a million people that I don't know. And that's part of the reason why I think pitchwars converted me in terms of the community, is because like it, as Becca was saying, it's like a ready-made community with a lot of infrastructure around it and a lot of people who are like all working towards the same goal in the most kind of like pure raw go team kind of way possible. And so like I know that there are probably people out there like me who are like rolling their eyes right now about the whole community stuff, but like it's real. I'm converted. I can preach about it all day.
Yeah, I'm in a third community. And I think one of the big things to keep in mind, and why I think probably no matter where people are at in their publishing journey, this community thing keeps coming up, is because when I was stuck in querying for longer than I'm going to admit to, I just kept thinking, oh, when I get an agent, this everything will be perfect and it'll be so much easier. And then it was, okay, when I get a book deal, and now I have like 3 of them, and it doesn't get easier. None of this gets easier. In some ways, it gets harder. So having those people who will listen to you whine and complain because, you know, you've been on sub for a day and no one's bought your book yet, and poor you, that's so critical. And honestly, you're not going to make it on your own. Like, you need those people who have been there and who understand, or who can just commiserate when you're just having a really bad day, and the people who can celebrate with you and scream and yell when the good things happen. And that is just, honestly, having that is more important than the agent. And getting an agent now doesn't mean that that's going to be the person that you're with forever. So you have those friends that stay with you forever, regardless of whether or not you switch agents, regardless of whether or not your book does as well as you want it to, or whether or not you get another new agent. So those people just, I cannot underscore the importance of having those people in your corner.
I would completely agree with all of that. I think one of the things I'm most proud of, besides, you know, getting to know people through Pitch Wars, writers who, you know, like some of you guys, like I'm not very great at talking, at like making friends with people online, or at least I wasn't until Pitch Wars. So it really helped me. But like the other thing that I'm extremely happy and like proud of is that I became such good friends with my mentor in 2016. And like she and I now have like, you know, a real friendship where we like see each other. And you know, she came to my book launch. She flew across the country to help, you know, to be there for my book launch, which was amazing. And like you know, and we support each other in all kinds of ways. And so like for me, like that is the best relationship I guess I got out of Pitch Wars was with my mentor. And so like I hope that will be something that I can make happen for someone else, or, you know, and just in general, the community, the mentors, the mentees, the people, the hopefuls who don't necessarily get in but become a group, and it is extremely, you know, important. And I think such a great thing.
All right, cool. We had a clarifying question from the first section, so I'm just going to answer it real quick. By open to change, do you mean changing the manuscript? Yes, that's what they meant. All right, another quick question. Must your manuscript be totally finished? Yes, that's one of the rules of Pitch Wars. Your manuscript has to be finished completely. So Dan got his question answered by some other people. There are numbers going on in the chat if you want to see what kind of numbers we get. Let's see. Grace, we have a lot of questions that are like real quick yes questions. Are there instances where a mentee queried an agent before Pitch Wars, got rejected, then got those agents during the showcase? Yes, it happens quite a bit actually. Okay, good question. Emma, are comp titles totally necessary, or does it depend on the mentor? So I guess y'all can let us know what you think about the comp titles.
I like comp titles. I think if you don't know what a good comp title is, though, like I don't think that's a big problem, especially for Pitch Wars, because I mean I do think agents like to know that you know the market and that you have an idea of where it fits, and that's where comp titles are important. And I like to see them just because it does give you an idea of what the author is aiming for. But no, I don't think it's, if you really can't figure it out, like pick something close, pick something that, you know, pick a movie, pick a television show that's close, or you think has vibes that are similar, or even like talk about what part of that TV show or movie or book that you think is a good parallel for your book. But no, I don't think it's like, for me personally, it's not like you have to have comp titles.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. I'm somebody who's really big on like premise and like big hook, big like high concept type plots, and so I love having comp titles. That said, if you don't know of any, like that's something that I could figure out with a mentee. But I think that point about like don't be afraid to comp like movies, TV shows. I've been seeing people like for PitMag comping like songs recently. I think that's probably not where I would go if I were querying an agent, because with an agent, you really want to show that there's, you know, a history in the market of like, here are other books that people spend money buying right now that are similar to my book. But for a mentor, where I think, at least for me, I'm looking more from the query to get a sense of like the overall premise and kind of feel and tone and vibe of the book. I'm pretty open to kind of unusual comps, comping not even just a whole show, but like a character from a show. All of those kinds of things would be fair game for me. But yeah, sometimes even with like big high concept plots, there's not always a super great comp for it, because maybe if there's a hole in the market. I'm working on a book right now that's comping like Indiana Jones and National Treasure, and like there's not a ton of great there's not a ton of recent YA books that comp that. It's still kind of a big high concept plot, but it's not something that exists super literally in the market right now. So it wouldn't be an automatic rule out for me. But yeah, don't be afraid to kind of like think outside the box when it comes to comps.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think comps are great, especially for something like Pitchwars, because it gives us an idea of what you're going for, which is really great. Because like, even if your character is not 100% polished, or your manuscript isn't 100% polished, it's nice to be able to have like that idea in our heads. But you know, like everybody else is saying, don't feel like you have to like force it. It's better not to put something than to put something that would be completely misleading, in my opinion.
I think too, comps can be, if you find one that works, it can be a good exercise in showing you can distill your book down to something that's like bite size. Like the best comp I've ever seen still is Karen and McCannis for One of Us is Lion. She calls it The Breakfast Club with Murder, which is like perfect because you know exactly what that book is. So yeah, don't force it, but also don't be afraid to get a little bit creative, especially with something like Pitchwars, because we're kind of looking to know that you can say, this is my book, this is what it's about, and that you're ready to like polish it and make it better.
Yeah, I love comp combinations that are surprising, things that you would kind of look at and go, how exactly do those things go together in a single book? But I mean, to simply answer the question, I'm not going to not pick your book just because you can't come up with comps. So if there's nothing that feels right and nothing that quite fits, then don't stress it too much. I don't think anybody's going to not pick a book just because of that.
All right. Lodestar asked a question. You don't have to answer if you don't want, but how would you celebrate the end of Pitchwars with your mentees? I'm going to say like most people would just like have a good long sleep because I feel like nobody sleeps enough during Pitchwars.
That's accurate.
Yeah.
I took a lot of day naps for like a week after last year.
How often?
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry. I was going to say.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
real quick. It's super quick. I was just going to say, like, I would tell my mentee, go get some rest and, like, you know, go relax, do something not writing related, and, you know, have some fun for a week or two before you get back into the aquarium trenches. So
Take a break.
That's it.
How often do mentors accept memoir submissions? So we allow mentors to accept memoir submissions, but it's not a focus of Pitchwars. So it's just kind of like if a mentor happens to be interested in memoirs, they may put it on their wish list. So I will say some mentors do take it, but it's definitely not a focus of Pitchwars. We have a question from Jade. What is the biggest writing lesson you've personally learned on your personal journey?
I guess for me, I can say I've finally, after I don't know how many books, I've lost count. I've learned to kind of trust the process, even if it doesn't feel like it makes any sense. I'm not a plotter until I'm halfway through the book, and then I start plotting obsessively. I really can't go into a book knowing exactly what happens. That just doesn't work for me. And every time I start a book, I go, I should be a plotter. I should have all of this planned out. I should follow all these rules. I should write my synopsis first. And it just doesn't work for me. So I think knowing how you write and what works for you and just sort of trusting that goes a long way to really starting to come into your own as a writer in a lot of ways. You just kind of got to sometimes jump in and trust that you're going to go through the book, because too much worry gets in your head and then you end up with a half-finished book that goes nowhere.
I would say for me that with feedback, learning that when, and like this is, I don't get credit for this, my friend Amy Carter taught me this because she's smarter than me. When someone tells you to change something in your book, the change they suggest is usually wrong, but the fact that you have to change something is right. So when you get notes from your agent or an editor in an edit letter and you like want to cry or throw your computer away, usually when they're like, do this, this, and this, you don't have to do that. But if someone who knows what they're doing or multiple readers are snagging on something, it's your job to go in and fix it. And I think having that mindset has made it a lot easier for me to accept feedback and kind of be willing to tear my book apart and make it a lot stronger.
Co-sign that like 1,000%. And I think like my goal mentoring last year and this year too is always to like get to the underlying issue and not so much like it's my job to tell you exactly what to do. Let's collaborate together and figure out like how do you think we could solve this problem that we're identifying. I have like kind of a more tactical writing one and then a more personal one. I think from like a writing craft perspective, not only through like my own pitchwars experience and going through the process of getting an agent, going on to working with an editor, but also like all of the people's whose submissions I read last year, working with my mentee last year, it's really become clear to me how important it is to like really ground your characters in like the physical reality of the scene. I think my hypothesis is that writers are like really thinky people. And so we just sort of like want to sit around like having our thinky thoughts in our characters' heads for like pages and pages on end. And like I am the guiltiest of this, so I cop to that. But like finding ways to integrate that into physical reality. And I think sometimes it's easy to go for the cheap shot of like just listing all the things the character like sees or smells or whatever, but finding ways to actually like ground the character and have them be like moving around the space and interacting with their environment is like has made probably the single greatest difference in my writing. And then my kind of like more personal hokey answer is that like I cannot stress enough how much self-care is important as a writer, specifically going through the pitchwars process, but also just like for your entire publishing career. Pitchwars is like a really great trial by fire about like if you don't set boundaries around like your time, your rest, taking breaks, all of that kind of stuff, nobody is going to do it for you. And so for me personally as a mentor, that's a big focus of the stuff that I work on with I worked on with my mentee last year and continue to talk about now of like we have to make sure that you're getting enough rest. We have to make sure that you're eating. We have to make sure that you're drinking water because I burnt myself out really hard. During my pitchwars year, I rewrote an entire book in 2 months, which like that's super badass and like go me. But also I didn't write another book for 2 years after that because I was just so tired. And so like if I could go back and do that over again, I'd rather have been writing consistently for those 2 years than like slamming through that edit in 2 months. And so it's really important to me that we be like learning how to take good care of yourself now, because not for any malicious reason, but because publishing is an industry where you're gonna have a lot of different people working on your book with lots of different conflicting deadlines and timeframes that they need things to happen in. There's gonna be a lot of expectations put on you. And I think sometimes as the writer, it often feels like I can't say no to anything. I have to hustle harder than anybody else. I have to always show up and be willing to work 12-hour days. And like, I promise you will burn yourself out. And I promise you that like, that's not going to be a way for you to have a sustainable career. So it's time for us to figure that out now.
Yeah, that's so true. Taking breaks is very important. I think that for me, it's been two things. One is that I've always been a real pantser for my whole life. And I have realized, particularly before I sold my second book, that that's not what the industry necessarily wants you to be, because you have to write a synopsis and you have to be able to explain your book before you write the entire book, as if you want your editor to buy it before you write the entire book. So sorry, we're all talking about my cat. So here's my cat. Hi, everyone. He's very distracting. I apologize. So what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So being able to have a sense of your overarching plot. I'm not a good plotter. I will never be somebody who writes like a 50-page plot. I wish I was. That would be amazing. But being able to at least have that ability is very good. Like for this industry, people want to know what you're doing, how you're doing it, and what you're like reaching for at like when you write something that's on spec. So being a plotter is something that I've learned can be very valuable.
I will say, I mean, I have like a lot. This is a very overarching question, so I find that tough. But like, one of the things I will just say, one of the things that I have learned, was that I needed to be more, I think I got into a cycle while I was querying before Pitch Wars, where I was querying for years off and on. And I got into a cycle where I would start to say to myself, like, oh, well, this agent won't go for it because of X reason or Y reason. And even though there wasn't necessarily anything on there, say wish list, say on their website that told me that. It was just sort of like, oh, I don't think they'll like it because I saw this one article somewhere. And so that would keep me from submitting to them, from querying. And I realized in the course of Pitch Wars, because we were all together talking and, querying together, that like there was no real point in me making a judgment for an agent when I don't know what's going on in that agent's head. It's just in my head. So my point was like, I got very much into, I guess, self-rejection is what we call it. And where you think that someone else will hate your work. And when you have no real logical basis for that fact, for that idea. So I guess my point is I learned to take more chances, to be less worried about what they might want or not want. I mean, obviously, if they have specific guidelines, you need to follow those. But if there's nothing specific saying, I don't like historical YA, then you have no reason to say they won't like in my case, in my book. So things like that. I think, so self-rejection was a big deal for me, like taking more chances, asking questions. And that's the good thing about having a community, is that you can ask questions and get answers. And this business is not, the most transparent business. So when you have people who are in it, it's extremely helpful to get some of that, to have some of that transparency about, I don't know, like what this agent might like, or any number of things, contracts, when you get into, when you get an agent eventually, that sort of thing. There's so many things that you need to ask questions about, and making sure you ask those questions is something that I'm continually learning and continually remembering, because you still get to that pattern where you don't want to ask questions, or you just think people will tell me, but most of the time they won't tell you unless you ask a question. So that's something big that I learned.
Liz, you started a war in the comments between plotters and pantsers. Oh my gosh.
I feel like that's on brand for you. I feel like
really
you often
is.
start that war on Twitter.
I do, because it's like a war I have with myself, like internally. It's my it's like my war.
Dude, I'm right there with you. I always say I'm a recovering pantser. Like, I'm doing my best to be a better person, or to be better, so I don't have to revise so much. And I'm like, oh, Rebecca, you can do it. Plan your book. And then I start and it goes off the rails.
I can admit to sending a synopsis to my editor entitled "My Synopsis-ish," because that was really like, I wasn't even gonna try and call it a whole thing. I was like, this is the best I got. I'm sorry.
Lodestar had said pantsers unite, and Jay said, pantsers, how are you going to unite if you don't have a plan? Anyway, I always say, like, when people yell at me for pantsing, I'm like, Nora Roberts is a pantser. I'll be fine.
Although I do have a good Nora Roberts story, because she's rep by Writer's House. So like the in-house editor at Writer's House is lovely. And she told me once, because the agent she directly works for, Amy Burkhauer, is Nora's agent. And she said that Nora is a pantser, except that once they were like, we really need a synopsis for this book for whatever reason. It's Nora Roberts. You'd think that somebody would just buy it, but whatever. And Nora was like, yeah, okay, I'll have it to you in 2 weeks. Sent them a synopsis and an entire draft of the book, because she's like, I couldn't write the synopsis.
That's so funny, because in high school, you know, you would have to like submit your like outline for your art essays or whatever before. I would just write the whole essay and then write the outline.
Every time. Every time. That was the only way. I was like, well, I guess this is due tomorrow then.
In defense of pantsers, and I think to Andrea's point about like trusting your own process, my mentee last year, Anne Freistadt, she did pitch wars the year before working with different mentors. And then her book, she didn't get a ton of agent requests. She didn't end up getting an agent out of pitch wars for that book, and decided to do NaNoWriMo just as like kind of a recovery from pitch wars because she likes pain, I guess. I don't know. And so she was like, what if I just like totally freewheel? She had formerly been a plotter, was like, what if I just totally freewheel this plot? I'm just going to make stuff up as I go, write it longhand, like just constantly ask myself, like, how can I make this worse or like more disgusting because it was a horror novel? Like wrote 70,000 words in about a month, applied to pitch wars, got into pitch wars, got an agent immediately after pitch wars. So like, I think not to say that like any one process is better than the other, but I think what she really learned and what she and I have talked about a lot in the aftermath is that like what suddenly clicked for her is just like not having any sort of value judgment on her own process of like, I'm just going to keep going forward and putting stuff on the page and not be like constantly critiquing the way that I'm writing this and having that be the getting in the way of me doing any of the actual writing. So if like you're a pantser out there, solidarity, and like you're cool, you're not like a bad person, I say to myself, I have no idea what they're doing at any time.
Nice. All right, switching gears. If you have a prologue, do you recommend including that as your pages with your query or your pages from your first chapter? Doesn't matter. For the record, we allow either. You can do either. So just a heads up on that. But if y'all want to answer, you know, which you would prefer to see.
I mean, if you have a prologue, I want to see it. I'm confused about what the two options are. Is it including it with your 10 pages sample or not including it at all?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you have a prologue, you can submit the prologue. If it's a long prologue, it's just going to be the prologue, right? But if it's a short prologue, you can do up to 10 pages. Or you can submit just starting chapter 1. Either way works.
Yeah, I would say if you have a prologue, if it's part of your manuscript, I want to see where the manuscript actually starts. If you're, I mean, I'm going to start like a flame war here apparently, but like, or like possibly, but to me, like if you feel like this prologue is not the best place to start your query package or your submission package, like maybe you don't need the prologue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna throw that out there.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I think the only time I might disagree with that, and I'm not even really that firm in my own response as I'm right or as I'm saying it, but if your prologue is going to take up the whole space, I'd probably want your chapter 1, because if like the prologue is from the point of view of somebody else that's not in the book and it's not your main character and it's not going to be a character that's in the book, then I think it might kind of give the wrong idea in terms of what I'm reading. If that voice and that person is never going to show up again, I'd probably want to see your chapter that has the person that I'm going to spend the whole book with. So that would be my only exception. If it's small, I'd want to see it. If it's going to take up the whole space, then I'd probably want to find the person that I'm going to spend the book with.
That's a fair point. I'm thinking about like Six of Crows now starts with like a total randos first chapter, and like I probably would not be as interested in that book if that were the only part of the book that I saw. Although again, arguably, did she need that first chapter? Who knows? But it's Lee Bardugo, so I'm not gonna start that argument. She's clearly doing fine.
All right. Okay, so if someone has their full manuscript out with multiple agents and hasn't heard back, should they still query to be a mentee or hold off? And just a procedural note, we do allow you to submit if you have full manuscripts out. Some people are confused by that. But we ask you, it's your decision, but we do ask you to email those agents and tell them you've made it into Pitch Wars, and ask them if it's okay if you can send the revised manuscript at the end of the revision period. And 99% of agents are okay with it. I want to say 100%, but we have had one person who was upset about it, but I'm not going to say any more about that. So if you have any advice related to that.
Yeah, I think I had like 7 fulls out when I got into Pitch Wars, and I emailed all of those agents and just said, hey, you know, I got into Pitch Wars. overwhelmingly got responses back saying, congratulations, that's awesome, pitchwars is great, send it to me whenever you're done. And one of those people ended up being my agent that I still have now. So it does work. It doesn't hurt you in any way. They don't disqualify you if you ask them to hold on. I'm fairly confident that they have plenty of other books to read in the meantime.
And I would say too, like, make the best decision for you and your career. Like, don't hold off on doing anything because, I mean, obviously, like, follow normal procedural etiquette of the industry. Like, don't actively piss anybody off, but like, don't feel like you have to make decisions that are detrimental to your potential future just for the sake of like not ruffling any feathers. I think like, to me, I know people who have had like 75% request rates on their query and then gotten 100% rejection rates on their full. A full request is by no means a guarantee that you're about to get an offer. And like, if it is, that's great. Good for you to find out in the future. But I would say like, if you're, give yourself as many opportunities to succeed here as possible.
All right. Tracy asked a question I'm going to answer really quick, and the answer is they can't tell you. When you reject author submissions, do you give personalized feedback or do you try to keep more impersonal, like the querying process? So we actually ask our mentors not to say whether or not they're going to provide feedback because that will skew submissions and it can get bad. So, but I do want to talk about the language here. So it says when you reject an author's submissions, that's not really the way that I like to think about it because pitchwars mentors can only choose one. So it's not like an agent where an agent can theoretically choose as many as they want from their slush pile. So even though a mentor doesn't choose you, I don't think that should be taken as a rejection. Oh, there's lots of comments about synopsis. This is when we were talking about synopsis. Okay, that question was answered. Jamie, by the way, if our story is in multiple POV, where would you suggest we mention that? We talked about that in the first segment. So make sure you go back and rewind and watch that. And I'm scrolling, trying to find questions. There was a lot of conversation happening at this time, so I'm sorry. I'm still scrolling. Oh, okay. This Sarah asked, I was told at one point that a synopsis can't leave any question unanswered. Is that true for a one-page synopsis? Writing fantasy, I find that lots of questions remain unanswered. Anyone want to jump in?
Yeah, for fantasy, or well, in general, on a one-page synopsis, you can't answer every question. You have to have some things open. Just at least from my experience, I don't know how you would possibly cover everything in a one-page synopsis. So it just has to make sense. And in fact, in a one-page synopsis, like those open questions can be something that intrigues the reader of the synopsis. So, yeah, from my perspective, I don't think that you have to cover everything in a one-page synopsis. It just has to make sense and like draw people in.
Yeah, I don't think you can cover every part of your book in honestly any length synopsis, aside from the whole book. But I think if there's a whole lot of questions that you're not answering, maybe take a good look at what you're bringing up in the synopsis and find out if that stuff truly needs to be there, because a lot of times it doesn't. And it's super, super hard to figure out what really does need to be there and what doesn't. But my trick and the only way that I can write a synopsis is to start from the end. So I start with the end of the book and then I kind of trace my way back and say, what do I need in order to get to that end part? And that way, a lot of the extra stuff tends to fall off, because if it doesn't directly impact that ending, then it probably doesn't need to be in there. So I think if you feel like you read through this and you're getting people going, I didn't understand this, and what about this, and what about that, and what about this, you've probably raised too many questions and you probably need to pare down what you have in there. But yeah, I mean, don't go into it expecting to answer every single tiny little bit. Clarity is key. If you can have somebody who hasn't read your book read it and say, yeah, I get it, I understand where you're going with that, I can follow along, then you're probably pretty safe. And don't stress the synopsis too much. I know this is a thing that comes up every single year in pitch wars and people totally freak out about it. this is not going to make or break whether or not you get chosen as a mentee. It's not. So do your best, focus on it as much as you can, but don't, stay up until 5 a.m. every night stressing over whether or not your synopsis answers every single question.
Yeah, we all know how hard synopses are to write because we've all had to do it probably. And so I agree, don't stress it. I mean, make it as good as you possibly can. Don't, be lax about it. But at the same time, we know that they're hard to write.
Yeah. And so back before we required synopses with the original pitch package, I requested them every time I requested a manuscript. And only because in one of my first years mentoring, I got really burned because not even halfway through the book, I would say 60% of the way through the book, it changed entirely. It became a different genre. And so I was like, what, that would have been nice to know before. And that's the only reason I request a synopsis, is because I need to know if the story is a story, from beginning to end. That's it. That's all I want. Part of the reason why we started requiring it is because mentors are usually reading, depending on how picky they are, 5 to 10 full books in that time period. And so if they can read a synopsis and know right away, this ending is just not going to work, or, it goes into a territory that you're not willing to go into, then you can cut a little bit time down off of reading those. So yeah. So that's that. I always tell people, the only reason anyone needs a synopsis is they need to know that there is a story arc. And so don't stress too much about it. Okay. Jay had asked about your favorite tropes, which you're not allowed to answer because that's part of your wish list thing. So we'll save that for next time. I do want to mention, most of y'all, I think all of y'all are doing a Twitter chat at some point, right? So if you want to ask wish list questions of them, you can ask after the 12th. And some of you are also doing second video chats after the 12th as well. So you can come back and ask wish list questions then. Maria asks, for how much communication generally goes on between you and a potential mentee before you make a selection?
I mean, I hope you like me because you're probably going to hear from me a lot. That's not necessarily that's the gold standard that everyone should aspire to. Different mentors are different. Some mentees, if they're not open to chatting that much, then hey, I'd back off. But I am still amazing friends with my mentors. Sonia and Annette, they're adult this year, so I don't even have to compete against them anymore. They're amazing. You should submit to them if you match their wish list. But I adore them, and I'm so grateful that they're in my lives, and I love both of my previous mentees. And so if you're willing, I am willing to be your friend. So yeah, a lot. You will hear from me a lot. And as always, if it's too much, you can always say, please shut up, and I will.
I think before making the choice last year, we sent one round of questions to all the top handful that we were considering. Just some kind of general stuff around what are you looking to get out of this? What are you hoping that your relationship with your mentor is going to be like? What do you see as some of the biggest problems in your book? What to you is kind of the heart and soul of your book? What's the thing that you want to say with this? Just trying to get a sense of whether our creative visions align, because I didn't, obviously I don't want to be working with somebody where I have a totally different conception of their book than they do. And I think also at that point, if there were any changes where already I'm this is the one thing that I feel needs to be changed, that's something I would probably run by them. I know that's something that my mentor, Amy Trueblood, ran by me in my 2017 year. There were a couple of characters that really needed to be cut. I knew that they needed to be cut. She knew they needed to be cut. And she just wanted to check with me first that I wasn't going to pitch a fit over cutting them, which I was nope, cool, we're on the same page. So I think probably 1 or 2 rounds of questions, probably more one, just to kind of get a sense of where your head's at with your book, and most importantly, what you're looking to get out of the process. Because again, as everybody's talked about, it's about so much more than just getting the agent. It's about developing your writing craft, the kind of relationship we're going to have, all of that. And then once I've picked my mentee, like Andrea said, like boundaries are cool. I will always respect them. But like if I'm allowed to be, I will also be in your DMs every second being like, how you doing? How you feeling? Want to talk? What's going on? Want a picture of my dog? Is kind of my style.
Yeah, in the past, when I've done mentorship competitions, my co-mentors and I basically did what Kylie did, where it was like a quick email to make sure like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is my plan. Are we on the same page? And then when they were, and they ended up being my mentee, I was like, we're family now, if they want that. But I can speak for Grace and I both that we're both like, we're gonna make friends. So we'll probably just check in to make sure that our visions align. And then if they do, and we choose you and you're cool with it, then you'll be stuck with us.
Yeah, and last year, that's pretty much what we did too, was do this one round of questions, just make sure that, that the changes we're thinking about, the potential mentee is comfortable with, because you don't want to get into a situation where you have like clashing visions and that would just be awkward for everyone.
Yeah, I would say, like, I think in 2018 we did a round of questions for the people who we requested more material from, and I'm planning to do that again this year. Possibly maybe a couple round of questions. We'll see. It's sort of an evolving process, I think. But yeah, no, like I want to get to know you if, I'm considering you as a mentee, because obviously we have to kind of get along to some extent. Hopefully we get along really well. So yeah, I mean, I think, and then afterwards, we'll figure it out. It'll be based on your and my, my mentee and me and how we deal together, and we'll figure it out. But yeah, I'm planning to be pretty involved, obviously, as I think all of us are. So yeah.
Sorry, sometimes the comments jump like 20 minutes ahead and I have to scroll back. So that's what just happened, like right before y'all stopped talking, which was the worst time for that to happen. All right, so here we go. This might be our last question. We might have time for one more, but for all the previous mentors, and Rebecca, you've been a mentor in other contests, so I'm sure you can answer as well. What was your selection process for picking your mentor? What did that look like? And the last group talked about theirs as well, so.
Can I just clarify, like as a mentee picking a mentor, or as a mentor picking a mentee?
A mentor picking a mentee.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it says previous mentees. That's right. Sorry, you read the question right and I read it wrong.
I wasn't sure because it said mentor.
Mentees, what was your selection process for picking your mentor? Okay. Yeah, that's good too. Let's do that one. Sorry, my bad.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, you.
Good. Whole chat full of women. We could do this all day. I think that I would always say, like, make sure that you read everybody's wish list super carefully. I think I spent I had like a whole like multi-page document of just notes on like different comps that people had suggested that or had said in their wish list that, I was looking for something like Veronica Mars or whatever, which my book comps pretty heavily. And so like just making sure that I actually felt like I was a good fit for their tastes, and not just their tastes in terms of like how it would fit with my book, but I did really look at their other tastes as well. Like even in genres that I wasn't writing in, I was looking at what kinds of books they loved in fantasy and other kinds of contemporary books and stuff like that, just to kind of get a sense of like, do we have sort of the same books that we like, movies that we like, things like that, just so I know that we're kind of creatively aligned. I think obviously the most important part of that is the way that it fits with your book, but I think some of that other stuff around their other tastes and things like that was really useful too. And then I remember really clearly my mentor, Amy Trueblood, she talked a lot in her wish list about like the homework that she was going to assign and the just kind of like her mentoring process, what she's good at editorially. And I paid really careful attention to that. And to be clear, I'm like a super slacker. I like the word homework normally makes me break out in hives, but I was at a place with my manuscript where I was really frustrated because I knew I had something good. I knew I had something that could get published, but I just like couldn't figure out what the hell was wrong with it. That like, I knew that there was something not working, but I just didn't know enough about writing. It was the first book that I had ever finished. I just had no idea what to do with it. And so the idea of somebody who's like, here's the game plan of all the things I'm going to assign you and the kind of work that we're going to do to help you figure out the issues with your book and how to address them, that was super appealing to me because that was exactly what I was looking for in that moment. So I think paying really close, like, I think everybody always wants to go straight to the, like, what are they looking for? Like, how is my book going to fit their taste? And obviously all of that stuff is super important. But I think every mentor puts a section, or most mentors put a section in their wish list about like how they mentor and what that process is like with them. That I know I, at least sometimes I'm like, do people really read this? Is this the part that they really pay attention to? And like, I would recommend that.
Yeah, I would. I had a similar experience, Kylie, because I had the same issue with my manuscript where I didn't know what was wrong with it, but I knew it was like it had a good, I knew it was pretty good, but I didn't quite know what to do with it at that point. And so I really wanted someone who would have an idea and understood the genre. And mine being historical, like I had less people to submit to that year. There were, of course, people taking historical, but depending on your genre, like it can be easier to narrow things down. Or if you're, let's say, YA fantasy, it's not going to be that easy to narrow people down. So it's obviously dependent on your book, and as well as like how well you think you're going to get along with, or how well you think you'll mesh with that person based on their wish list. So I think all those things need to go into your decision making. And for me, what I did was very similar. I went through everyone who was A, taking historical books, and then B, like, do their other tastes sound like things I like? And then those people rose to the top. And then beyond that, it was like, can I handle the way they think they're going to mentor, and the way they've outlined it on their wish list. So like certain people who who said up front, like, I'm going to be kind of brutal, like I'm hardcore, and I will, I'll make it perfect. It'll make it great, but it might be difficult. It'll be a difficult time. And I, like, for me at that time where I was like, oh, that's scary. I don't know if I can handle that. So, so some of those people who said that up front, I put down my list, and like, so I went somewhere in the middle. I went for those people who kind of said they were going to make you do the work and they were going to be honest, which I think is what you need. But I was personally kind of afraid of those other people and didn't submit to them. Now, whether that was a good strategy or not, I don't know, but it worked out okay in my case. But every person's going to be different, and everyone has to have their own criteria as far as that stuff goes. So I think when you're looking through the wish list, you should have your criteria in your mind, figure out what's more important to you, as well as obviously who takes what you write.
Yeah, I made a spreadsheet, which is also my answer for how do I pick my mentee. Honestly, people will start to blend together. And so to have that list there where you can make like little notes is super, super helpful. And then you don't have to go through the wish list a million times over. Though I will say, double check it at least once, because you do miss people. Sometimes, you glaze over and then you go back and you say, oh, wait, no, this person maybe does kind of match up with me. Definitely look at the things that people are not looking for. Everybody is going to have a list of, for whatever reasons, these topics are not for me. And I promise you, I'm not going to change my mind on it just because you put it in your book. And everything, I'm going to go, oh gosh, they wasted this because I just personally cannot read this story for whatever reasons. So definitely look at those, follow those. But last thing, don't be afraid to ask questions. I think people get like so nervous, like, oh gosh, I'm going to bother them. You're really not. Like, we're not super cooler than you. We're just other writers that are trying to help out. So just, that's what the forums are for. That's what Twitter is for. Twitter feed, not DMs. Yes, Sarah, am I saying that right? Yes, okay. I wanted to clarify so I didn't get in trouble.
Don't DM mentors unless they have explicitly said it's okay.
So yeah, but use the forums and don't like say, I'm sorry, I need to ask you this question. You don't need to apologize. You're not bothering us. That's what we're here for. So if there's something in a wish list that you say, ooh, I'm not really sure. They say they don't want that, but mine's a little different, and you're just going to get in all your head about it and be worried about whether or not you're wasting your pick, just ask and we can give you a yes or no.
I'm happy you mentioned the spreadsheet, Andrea, because I did want to put out a word of caution. Every year we've seen someone put together a spreadsheet about mentor wish lists with what genres they're taking. And every single year, without fail, there have been wrong things on it. So don't rely on someone else's spreadsheet. Do your own work. So I'm glad you said that, because it's every year, and every year it's like, oh, that's not even right. All right, so we are out of time. So if each of you could just this is your opportunity to promote yourself. So tell people where they can find you online, and also if you have any books, make sure you mention those. And I'm Sarah Nicolas. This is my YouTube channel. So if you want to subscribe to that, that would be cool, because I do other things on here too. Yeah, you can find me online on Twitter at Sarah_Nicolas. Next.
I guess I'll go. I'm Jennieke Cohen, and you can find me online at jennicacohen.com, or Jennieke_Cohen is my Instagram and Twitter handle. Which I'm there relatively. I mean, I haven't been there recently just because I'm writing a book, but I will be there. And let's see. As I said before, my book is Dangerous Alliance, which is available now at all retailers. And my next book is called My Fine Fellow. It is a gender-swapped My Fair Lady retelling in alternate London 1830s. So you can add that on Goodreads. And it'll be out. Actually, it won't be out until for a couple of years, but you can add it. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
I'm Liz Lawson. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm Liz Lawson, and like I said, wherever it is over here, somewhere, my debut, The Lucky Ones, came out on April 7th. And I have a second book that is currently slated for January of 2022. It's tentatively entitled In Silent Seas We Drown, and it's a YA contemporary, like, I keep calling it an emotional thriller, but it will make you cry and wonder who the bad guy is. So check it out on Twitter and Instagram. I am the unpronounceable LZLWSN. It's my name with no vowels. And my author website is lizlawsonauthor.com.
Okay, I'm Becca Mix, and my handle and everything is MixBecca, so you can find me on Twitter and TikTok and wherever, making a fool of myself, as per usual on social media. And then I'm not allowed to talk about the two things I'm waiting to announce, because publishing likes to make you wait 86 years. So if you follow me, eventually I'll be able to tell you about the things I've been working on, but not yet.
And I'm Kylie Schachte. I am at Kylie Schachte and the spelling should hopefully be there, because otherwise it's impossible. And I'm at Kylie Schachte on every social media platform, or I guess really just Twitter and Instagram are the only ones I use. Your Next is my book. It's out now. It's available everywhere books are sold. It's like a YA thriller, film noir meets high school kind of thing. And I've also got Instagram Live author event happening next week, I believe on the 11th. More details to come on that with author Aiden Thomas, whose book Cemetery Boys just came out. So that'll be on my Instagram. Like I said, I'll be posting the details about that because I can't remember the time off the top of my head right now. But I'll be posting more details about that on my Twitter and my Instagram if anybody wants to check that out. And everybody should buy his book too, because it's phenomenal.
I am Andrea. This is my book. It just came out on September 1st over there. Just last Tuesday, I have 2 more books coming out with Scholastic, 2021 and 2022. The 2021 book is called Out of the Fire. It's about a group of 4 girls who kind of band together to get a bit of revenge on the people that have wronged them. So very, very excited about that. You can find me on Twitter, Andrea_Contos. On Instagram, I am Andrea A. Contos. So there's 2 A's in there. Everybody always forgets them. Yeah, I think that's it.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming tonight and answering questions. If we did not get to your question, we have several more video chats and also Twitter chats coming up. So follow Pitchwars on Twitter, or you can go to pitchwars.org and look at the blog post from Tuesday. It has everything listed on it. I think that's everything. So thank y'all for joining us. Have a good night. Everyone stay safe and wash your hands and wear a mask. And we'll see you next time. And I gotta find, there it is. Okay, bye.